Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I wish to inform the House about my recent trip to Ukraine. It was at the invitation of Ruslan Stefanchuk, Chairman of the Rada in Ukraine. I joined speakers from across Europe in a memorial service to mark the 3rd anniversary of the Bucha massacre and to hear the important testimony of the survivors of this terrible atrocity. I also delivered a speech at the Bucha summit, which was opened by the President of Ukraine, and took with me specific cross-party messages of solidarity from the House of Commons, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of the Liberal Democrats. The appreciation felt by the people of Ukraine at the support offered by this House, the people of the United Kingdom, should not be underestimated. Indeed, his nightly address on Monday, President Zelensky explicitly expressed his thanks to the United Kingdom for the support provided to them. Order, order. We now come to Prime Minister's questions. John Grady.
Question number 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, just picking up on your comments, can I say that on Monday night I spoke to President Zelensky and he wanted me to pass on to you his thanks for attending in Ukraine, particularly on the 3rd anniversary of the massacre at Bucha, which I've been to Bucha. It's a terrible, terrible 3rd anniversary, so I pass on those thanks. Mr. Speaker, we've been preparing for all eventualities ahead of the confirmation of US tariffs later today. Let me be clear with the House. A trade war is in nobody's interests, and the country deserves, and we will take, a calm, pragmatic approach. That's why constructive talks are progressing to agree a wider economic prosperity deal with the US. That's why we're working with all industries and sectors likely to be impacted. Our decisions will always be guided by our national interest, and that's why we have prepared for all eventualities, and we will rule nothing out. Mr. Speaker, our deepest sympathies are with the people of Myanmar and Thailand. We are sending immediate life-saving support to assist their efforts. May I also extend my personal condolences to the family, friends and colleagues of Christina McKelvey. She was much loved and will be sorely missed, especially by our colleagues in the SNP here and in Scotland. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
John Grady. Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the full state pension will rise by £472 a year, putting money in the pockets of pensioners in Glasgow and across the United Kingdom. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that this rise is only possible because of Labour's plan for change and our commitment to the triple lock?
Well, he's absolutely right. We can commit to the triple lock because we've restored stability after they crashed the economy. And that means, Mr. Speaker, next week 12 million pensioners will receive up to £470 more. That's an extra £1,900 over this Parliament, including 1 million pensioners in Scotland. And the contrast couldn't be clearer. The Shadow Chancellor called the triple lock unsustainable, and the Leader of the Opposition wants to means test the state pension so that she can cut it.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the triple lock was a Conservative policy.
Yes.
Rather than... Yes.
Order. I know... You was inadvertently said. Carry on, Leader.
Rather than the Prime Minister congratulating himself for what we did, why don't we talk about what he's doing? Yes. From Sunday, Labour's jobs tax will mean many British businesses face a terrible choice: to cut wages, put up prices or sack their staff. What is the Prime Minister's advice to those businesses?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, she says the triple lock was Conservative policy. It was once thought to be the party of sound finances, but they blew all of that. Mr. Speaker, she asked what we're doing. We're clearing up the mess that they left. We're dealing with global instability, and we recognise the pressures that are bearing down on businesses and individuals and working people. That's why we're rolling up our sleeves. And yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to announce the national living wage increasing by £1,400. That's a pay rise for millions of workers. We've announced £150 for the Warm Homes discount, extended now to 6 million households. That's 1 in 5 families. And wages are going up faster than prices. And never forget, the party opposite, worst living standards on record, inflation up to 11%, public services left on their knees.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the only mess is the one that he made with his budget. They had an emergency budget last week that fixed nothing. He says he's bringing stability. All we see is fragility. During the election, the Prime Minister also promised that he would not increase taxes on working people. But even the OBR says that the jobs tax will be passed on to workers. On average, families will be £3,500 poorer. Why should anyone trust him again?
Prime Minister.
Well, her fantasy figure is about as much use as Liz Truss's economic planning. And she turns up every week to carp from the sidelines about the decisions we made at the budget. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, she held a press conference and she couldn't say whether she would reverse the decisions that we made at the budget. Now, I understand, because she can't bring herself to say that she doesn't want the investment of an extra £26 billion in our NHS. I'm not surprised at that. That's 2 million extra appointments, that's 1,000 more GPs, a pay rise for nurses, etc., etc. But let me get her position right if I can follow it. She wants the extra £26 billion in the NHS, Mr. Speaker, that was paid for by the national insurance rise. She wants that. She doesn't want to reverse the national insurance rises. So she's now reduced this absurd position of voting in the budget, carping against a budget that she actually agrees with.
Mr. Speaker, I don't agree with making people poorer. I don't agree with pensioner poverty. I don't agree. Out there, they are calling it awful April. That's because of decisions he has made, because he made promises and broke them. His promises are worthless, Mr. Speaker. Yes. People are getting poorer. Yes. Before the election, he pledged to freeze council tax. Instead, it's going up everywhere. Even in Birmingham, where there's 17,000 tonnes of rubbish uncollected on the streets. Does the Prime Minister regret promising the British people he would freeze their council tax when he has so obviously failed?
Prime Minister.
Well, I have to ask, if she doesn't want people to be poorer, why didn't she resign when she was in government? Mr. Speaker, the last government put up council tax for 12 years in a row. She, I think, was actually Minister for Council Tax. And in the year she's been, what she do? She put it up. And even now, the Conservatives' own Local Government Association manifesto, so currently their position, page 9, we asked the government to remove the caps on council tax. So who's leading the charge? Hampshire County Council, they wanted a 15% hike, we said no. Slough Council wanted a hike, we said no. Windsor and Maidenhead was Tory, now Lib Dem. They wanted to hike and we said no. And it's no surprise that council tax is £300 cheaper under Labour councils than under Tory councils.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, he doesn't want to talk about Birmingham, and that's because he knows the situation. So I'll say it again. 17,000 tonnes of rubbish on Birmingham streets. Normally, a state of emergency is called for natural disasters, not Labour ones. His policies have left our economy dangerously fragile. The Chancellor, once again, left herself no room for manoeuvre. Economic experts, real economists, say she will either have to break her fiscal rules or put up taxes. Which will it be?
Prime Minister.
I think she must have picked up the script she was using a few weeks ago. Because it was only then she was saying, in the spring statement you're going to put up taxes. But look, Mr. Speaker, in relation to the situation in Birmingham, it is completely unacceptable. I fully support the Council in declaring it a major incident to resolve the situation, and we'll put in whatever additional support is needed. But when the party opposite was in government, we lost more days to strike action than in any year since the 1980s. NHS workers were on the picket line, not on the front line, and that sent waiting lists through the roof, so we'll take no lectures on industrial harmony from them.
Mr. Speaker, the whole House would have heard that he didn't say whether or not he could keep his fiscal rules. That means that it's either that or putting up taxes. 9 months ago, we left Labour the fastest growing economy in the G7. We did. And I remember watching his MPs laughing at their first destructive budget. They've had another one that has made our economy dangerously vulnerable. The Bank of England says his policies have pushed up the cost of living for families. Does he disagree with the bank, or does he accept his policies mean higher bills?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she must be the only person left in the country who actually thinks they did well on the economy when they were in power. That was what was tested at the last election. Living standards the worst on record. Inflation, 11% it soared up to. The NHS on its knees. Oh, Mr. Speaker, she's so obsessed with talking down the country that she's not read the OBR forecast properly. Growth up in 2026, 2027 up, 2028 up, 2029 up. And thanks to our planning reforms, the largest growth measure the OBR have ever costed. And what did the Tories do when the bill came before Parliament? They abstained. Well, you don't grow the economy or build houses by yourself. They're the same old party. They haven't changed. Nothing's new.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about inflation. We left it at 2%. It is now twice what the OBR forecast when we were in government. The fact is, his decisions have made our economy fragile, just as we face global trade wars. In November, I urged him to seize the draft US trade deal Conservatives negotiated. Instead, Mr. Speaker, he lost our most experienced trade negotiator. It's no wonder he can't get a tariff deal for British cars. On this side of the House, we secured investments for that industry, £600 million from BMW, £2 billion from Nissan, £4 billion from Jaguar Land Rover. Labour's record is a car industry in crisis, even before tariffs. There are 25,000 more jobs now at risk. He says he's preparing for eventualities. Can the Prime Minister tell us exactly what he is doing to protect the British car industry from his failure to negotiate?
We're taking a calm, pragmatic approach and keeping our feet on the ground. There are constructive talks that are ongoing on a wider economic prosperity deal with the US. That is really important at this moment. We are working with all sectors that are likely to be impacted, and we're guided by our national interest at all times. And that's why we've said we won't rule anything out. But it is important at a moment like this that we don't have knee-jerk reactions, that we are actually cool-headed about this, and that's why we won't rule anything out. But she must be. She's the Trade Secretary. She was the Trade Secretary, Mr. Speaker, who failed to get a trade deal with the US.
Mr. Speaker, today the Trump administration will announce new tariffs that will hurt working people in the US and around the world. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that at a time when big tech has grown fat by corrupting our politics and preying on young people, that the wrong approach would be to pander to his bullying tactics and to tech millionaires in his imperial court by cutting the digital services tax? Can he assure the public that the poorest won't get cuts while the richest get a free ride?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank her for raising this. It is an important issue, and there are issues in relation to Northern Ireland in particular that we have to deal with very carefully. We will, Mr. Speaker, always put the national interest first, and that's why I'm pleased that talks are ongoing and they're constructive talks. I do believe that a trade war is in nobody's interest, and all of the sectors and industries impacted are of the same view. So we'll continue to make that progress in the national interest.
The Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the earlier remarks of the Prime Minister, particularly about Myanmar and Thailand? And can I support the aid that is going, and hope that despite the budget cuts we can be as generous as possible because of the humanitarian crisis there? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has shown commendable leadership over Ukraine with his plan for a military coalition of the willing against Putin. Will he now provide similar leadership with an economic coalition of the willing against Trump's tariffs for free trade, so we can avoid a global trade war and a global recession?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think every week he tries to tempt me to make what I think is a false choice between our relationship with the US and our relationship with other countries, particularly Europe. I think that's the wrong choice on defence, on security and intelligence, for reasons that we've rehearsed across this chamber. I also think it's wrong on trade and the economy. We have a good deal of trade, a balanced trade relationship with the US, and I believe that our interests are best served by calmly trying to secure a deal which is in our national interest, whilst at the same time preparing and leaving all options on the table.
Sir Ed Davey.
Minister's reply. I hope he is able to cut a deal, but I increasingly fear that the deal won't be good enough to avoid a global trade war. That's why I think one of the options must be to work with our European allies, our Commonwealth allies and others, because we don't tackle Trump's tariffs. We could be saying goodbye to free trade for a generation. Mr. Speaker, if I may turn to a domestic matter now. 3 years ago, the American private equity firm KKR bought a 25% stake in Northumbrian Water. Since then, people across the North East have seen their water bills soar, whilst in last year alone, Northumbrian Water has dumped nearly 1 million tonnes of raw sewage into Durham's Whitburn Coast Conservation Area. KKR are now poised to buy into Thames Water because ministers have ruled out a special administration regime. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that Thames Water will not be allowed to repeat the same trick of putting up bills and dumping raw sewage at the same time? They allowed it, he shouldn't.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to his comments at the beginning of the question, I really do think it's not sensible to say the first response should be to jump in to a trade war with the US. That cannot be the first response of the United Kingdom, and I will resist his urgings to do that. In relation to water, he's absolutely right to point out the appalling record on water of the party opposite, just like your record on everything was appalling, and that's why I'm really pleased that we've passed the Water Act already to take the necessary measures, but we will go further.
David Egan.
Yesterday, the Work and Pension Select Committee visited Manchester, where we saw the power of devolution in action, in this case helping people find work. So with just 5 percentage points separating Labour and Conservative last time, does the Prime Minister agree that to get the maximum advantage from Labour's devolution offer, the West of England needs an ambitious Labour mayor in Helen Godwin for more jobs, to fix our buses and to get the homes we need built?
I believe it's best for communities when their leaders have skin in the game. Helen Godwin grew up in Stapleton, went to college in Filton, and has a great record fighting for the community where she's raising her family. Mr. Speaker, our plan for change has delivered record funding for the West of England. That's more money for better buses, for potholes, and getting young people into work. That's the difference a Labour mayor working with a Labour government delivers for the West of England.
Gavin Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will know that many in the House will be assuaged by his suggestion that he will act in the national interest in relation to tariffs. But most won't have considered that in acting in the national interest, what occurs in Northern Ireland is no longer solely in his control. He knows that exports from Northern Ireland are UK exports, rightly so. Yet imports to Northern Ireland could lay at the consequence of EU retaliatory action. In keeping all of his options open, now we have to live in a world with the consequences of the last government with his support. Will he indicate that he is prepared to take steps to either exempt Northern Ireland from EU action or take retaliatory action if they do not?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this issue, which is of real importance to his constituents and everybody in Northern Ireland. It is a very serious issue. That's why we need to be calm and pragmatic. And I think that's what workers and businesses in Northern Ireland would want to see from this government at a time like this. We are, as he would expect, looking carefully at the details of any retaliatory tariffs announced by the EU, if they are, and what impact they might have on businesses. As he knows, where goods do not enter the EU, then businesses can claim a full reimbursement of any EU duties paid. But I reassure in the interests of Northern Ireland at the forefront of our decisions, and he may want to know that this morning the Business Secretary spoke to the Northern Ireland Executive because this is a serious issue and we need to work together to resolve it in the interests of everybody in Northern Ireland.
Mike Tapp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the last government resorted to damaging keyboard diplomacy, this government is leading, bringing 40 nations together this week to tackle illegal immigration. Like the Prime Minister, I've seen firsthand how counter-terror powers can disrupt threats before lives are lost. That same approach is essential in dismantling the smuggling networks, Mr. Speaker. Does he agree it's time the Conservatives and Reform dropped the posturing, put national security first and backed our borders bill?
Well, I mean, the party opposite tried an open borders experiment. We are now tackling illegal migration. They talked about flights, Mr. Speaker. We've already removed 24,000 people with no right to be here. Under their Rwanda scheme, which was only ever supposed to return, I think, 300 people a year, what we've achieved in 9 months would have taken them 80 years. We've replaced a gimmick with a real deterrent.
Tim Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has spoken very movingly and with genuine sincerity and affection about his time as a young man in the Langdale Valley and the Lake District in my constituency and how that helped to shape him. So I wonder if he's aware that the hill farmers who maintain those stunning landscapes in the lakes and elsewhere will be earning on average significantly less or barely half the national minimum wage due to cuts in their income, despite the fact they provide the backdrop to the remarkably important tourism economy. So would you agree to meet with me and upland farmers in the lakes and the dales so that we can design a scheme together to end this poverty and equip our hill farmers to produce food and protect our epic landscapes for generations to come?
Prime Minister.
He and I share a love of the Lake District. And we still go back there with our children now. This is a serious issue, obviously, and that's why we've put a record amount into farming at the budget, but also set out our roadmap. But I'll happily make sure that he gets a meeting with the relevant minister to go through that and to take on board any points he has to make in relation to it.
Any bills?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hundreds of residents in my constituency at Union Park are facing massive £1 million worth of charges to repair their heating system, to repair fire safety works that haven't been put right by the developer, who has now declared bankruptcy and walked away. Their new freeholder has washed their hands of responsibility and instead is leveraging huge ground rent bills and fines against those residents. Does the Prime Minister agree with me? This is exactly why we have to move forward with our plan, much delayed from the party opposite, to abolish the outdated leasehold system once and for all as part of our plan for change.
Prime Minister.
The Deputy Prime Minister is saying absolutely in my ear. Mr. Speaker, we will end the feudal leasehold system, which has left millions of homeowners subject to unfair costs and unreasonable practices. Our reforms include clear standards for repairs and maintenance, and this will give homeowners a greater say in how their homes are managed. And I know the Housing Minister will have heard what he said.
Mr. Speaker, this Labour government has failed the British public at every turn. They have abandoned the WASPy women, leaving them without compensation they deserve. They have turned their backs on pensioners by failing to support the winter fuel allowance. They have let down children by keeping a two-child benefit cap in place, and they will inflict further hardship on the most vulnerable by slashing $5 billion from benefits. But perhaps the most immediate and visible failure, one that poses an immediate and direct health risk to the people of Birmingham, is the appalling financial mismanagement of Labour-run Birmingham City Council. After more than a decade of Labour control, their incompetence has led to mountains of uncollected rubbish piling up on every street, so vast that it can be seen from satellites orbiting space. It is nothing short of a disgrace and a damning indictment of Labour's inability to govern. Will the Prime Minister take urgent action to protect the public health and the people of Birmingham by immediately deploying the...
Order. We're meant to ask a quick question, otherwise no one's going. Prime Minister.
Well, I've said the situation in Birmingham Council is completely unacceptable, but he might want to tell his constituents that we've delivered 2 million extra appointments for the NHS, so waiting lists are coming down for his constituents. We've delivered the national living wage, a £1,400 increase, including for his constituents. We've got record investment into this country, growing the economy, including for his constituents.
Blunder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Harewood and Middleton North are grafters. They want to work and they want to see opportunities created and the skills and investment in infrastructure that we need in future. I welcome the Prime Minister's commitment to fix the transport system in the north of England that's been holding us back, and I would like to invite him to the Aton Valley Development Zone in my constituency to discuss how we can create skilled jobs in North Greater Manchester.
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful for our question. We will unlock growth across the country in partnership with local leaders and giving powers to those with skin in the game. And we'll fix the North's broken transport system, another thing they left in a complete mess, with nearly £1.7 billion for local buses, for roads and for trams, and an additional £415 million to upgrade the Trans-Pennine route and fixing millions of potholes. And obviously I'll consider her kind invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the Prime Minister and I last spoke, more than 6,000 people have signed an open letter to the Health Secretary in support of North Devon District Hospital, which faces a 10-year wait for urgent repairs. Please can I ask the Prime Minister why the hospital is still being denied a ministerial visit, and will the government consider the Trust's emergency plans, meet with me and the Trust so we can discuss keeping the operating theatres open beyond 2027 to meet capacity?
Prime Minister.
As in our previous exchange, obviously the unfunded promises, fancy promises of the party opposite, meant his hospital would never have been delivered. They shouldn't moan, they should apologise to his constituents. We had to take tough decisions to make the programme deliverable, which is what we've done. We will continue to support the Trust to maintain facilities in advance of the new hospital investment. And the Minister for Secondary Care will be visiting the hospital, and that will be an opportunity, I hope, for the necessary discussions.
Jacka.
Mr. Speaker, Stone Lodge Academy, a special school in Ipswich, will be one of the first schools in the country to benefit from a new breakfast club this month. It's an important step to tackling Suffolk's decade-long SEND crisis, as is the multi-million-pound funding settlement given to opening new specialist places across the county. Can the Prime Minister outline what steps he will be taking to further break down the opportunities for all children as part of our plan for change?
Well, I'm very pleased to say, Mr. Speaker, the first 750 breakfast clubs will open this month. And I'm pleased there's an early adopter in his constituency, as well as in the constituency of the Leader of the Opposition. I'm sure she will welcome that one of these weeks. Mr. Speaker, that will put £450 a year back in the pockets of working people. Mr. Speaker, today we've awarded £37 million to 300 primary schools to create up to 4,000 nursery places from September, making it easier for working families to access government-funded childcare.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. 2,700 workers at Scunthorpe Steelworks are facing redundancy, many more in the supply chain, and many of them are my Brigg & Gould constituents. It's welcome that negotiations are continuing, but whatever the outcome, significant support is going to be needed for to support the local economy. I know that all those affected would appreciate and be reassured that if the Prime Minister could give an indication that he was personally taking an interest in this, and that at some point in the not too distant future he would meet with me, neighbouring MPs and the council leader to discuss the way forward.
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to him for raising it. I do take a personal interest. I went to Scunthorpe to talk to the management and the workers there a short while ago and understand firsthand the challenges and how deeply worrying it will be for those working there and their families and the community as a whole. And that's why there are negotiations. I do call on the company to accept the offer of financial support that has been advanced so we can achieve a sustainable future for the workforce, for the industry and the local community, because I do believe there's a bright future for steel and needs to be a bright future for steel, but I do take a personal interest in it.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Too many of my constituents are struggling to get access to a GP appointment when they need one. Our GPs are trying their best, but they're struggling with capacity, outdated buildings and outdated tech, all because the party opposite broke the front door to the National Health Service. Can the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that our plan for investment and reform will ensure they will be able to see a GP when they need one?
Mr Speaker, we are focused on delivering real results for patients by scrapping unnecessary targets, bringing back the family doctor and requiring online bookings to help the 8 a.m. scramble. We're investing an additional £889 million to reinforce the front door of our NHS, and that's the biggest increase for over a decade, and that mean hundreds more GPs since we came to power. And this week we've announced record investment for community pharmacies to deliver more services for patients and free up GP time.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The recent NHS England report laid bare a catalogue of failures which left a patient with a history of violent aggression, unconfined, untreated and completely unmedicated for 9 months until he killed Ian Coates and the young friends Grace O'Malley Kumar and Barnaby Webber from Taunton in my constituency. Will the Prime Minister join with me and the people of Taunton in paying tribute to the families who have campaigned on this? Will he confirm that a public inquiry is to begin? And will he confirm that in the context of 50% cuts to integrated care boards, that mental health services, both in the community and secure, will not suffer from those cuts?
Yes. Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this tragic case? And I do pay tribute to the families, often in cases like this, including this case. I find it hard to think how I would actually respond if I was a family member in circumstances like that. I'm not sure I'd have the courage that they have to campaign in the way they campaign, and I pay tribute to it. We do need to get to the bottom of all of the issues here, wherever they may lie, and that's what we will do.
Imogen Walker.
Mr Speaker, in Hamilton and Clyde Valley, my constituents are struggling to access the healthcare that they desperately need. 1 in 6 Scots are on a waiting list. Yep. Meanwhile, in England, the waiting lists have been coming down for the last 5 months, and more than 2 million appointments have been made available. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the SNP-led government should stop blaming everybody else for their failures? When Scotland's broken public services are their responsibility.
Well, Mr Speaker, she's right. Over 60,000 Scots have been stuck waiting for tests or treatment for over a year. That's a 46% rise in 1 year. I had to check that figure because it's so staggering. 46% rise in 1 year. And despite this backlog, almost 50,000 fewer operations are being carried out compared with before the pandemic. Mr Speaker, compare that to England, where we've driven down waiting lists with over 2 million extra appointments and scrapped NHS England to cut bureaucracy. Scotland's NHS is in desperate need of reform, but the SNP have no strategy, no plans and no ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier, the Prime Minister seemed reticent to answer a direct question on his jobs tax. So, next time he comes to my constituency to enjoy the beautiful Buckinghamshire surroundings of Chequers, will he go 5 minutes up the road to Wendover, visit Rumsey's handmade chocolate, and explain to Kate Rumsey why his and his Chancellor's choices have led to a 15% increase in their costs, that they've already had to lay people off and reduce the hours of those that they still employ? Is that what he meant by growth?
I'm happy to tell anyone why. £22 billion black hole left in the last week. They've crashed the economy. They've ruined our public services. And as we mend that and rebuild the country, they carp from the sidelines. And even now, they can't bring themselves to say they don't want the investment. They can't bring them to say they'll reverse the decisions we've made. They actually agree with the decisions we've made because we're clearing up the mess that they left.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago yesterday, my constituent James Henderson was killed with other aid workers from World Central Kitchen, taking humanitarian aid into Gaza. Jim's family have told me Jim would want confirmation from our government that we're taking all conceivable steps to make sure that aid, power and supplies are safely returned to Gaza. Could the PM confirm he's doing all he can to ensure this? And could the Prime Minister also confirm he will continue to push for a full investigation to be completed into the deaths of Jim and the other British WCK workers, and for appropriate action to be taken?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for raising this appalling incident, and our thoughts remain with the families of Jim, of John Chapman and James Kirby. The attacks on aid workers, Mr. Speaker, are never justified. The families do deserve justice. We're pressing the Israeli government to accelerate their investigation, including whether criminal proceedings should be initiated. Can I also say Israel must stop blocking aid into Gaza. Hostages must be released. I'll be able to have an urgent resumption of the ceasefire.
Final question, Alberta Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Double child rapist and murderer Colin Pitchfork is up for parole for the 5th time. Now, I know the Prime Minister doesn't have any direct control, nor should he, over the parole board, but he does have a view. As I've asked all his predecessors, I now put the question to him. Does he agree with me that men who brutally rape and strangle to death young women should, as a matter of principle, spend most of their natural life in prison?
Prime Minister.
I'm grateful to him for raising this appalling case, and I absolutely agree with him that there must be maximum penalties for anyone falling into that category. I've seen many of these cases for myself firsthand when I was prosecutor for 5 years, working with the police on really terrible cases, and know the impact that it has on victims. I thank him for raising it.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. We'll let from benches change up. Right.